You're listening to 91 Reasons, a journey into the twisted landscape of pop culture. Keep your hands and arms inside the podcast at all times. And now, the voice, Jeff Tucker.
Okay, welcome back to 91 Reasons. It's another episode. And if you could see how ridiculous I look, you wouldn't believe your eyes, because I've been editing a bunch of episodes together, or not together, but, stitching them together with all of the components that you would need to make an episode. And in doing so, I've gotten some help, some advice from a podcaster that I truly admire, Andy Sims from the most amazing podcast that I've ever listened to, The Hollywood Saloon. It is a shame they don't do it anymore, but Andy and John were the greatest podcasters of all time because they knew what they were talking about. They were informative. The shows were incredibly well produced, and it had a slickness back in a time when not a lot of podcasts had slick. So I've been fortunate enough to actually get to know Andy on Facebook, and he's been helping me out on how my podcast should sound. I know I'm still broadcasting in mono, which if it was a 70s sitcom would be a great joke about kissing, but on a podcast, I'm on the left channel only. So please bear with me as we continue the evolution of 91 Reasons. And in fact, right now, I'm speaking to you using a windscreen, which is great because you need a windscreen to keep from popping your P's and some of the letters that don't sound right, and they just sound weird, so the windscreen takes care of that. The problem is that I also am supposed to be using a microphone stand, and it didn't come in the mail yet. It's coming all the way from China, and the windscreen is supposed to attach to the microphone stand, and then I'm hands-free. And instead, I've gone from just holding the microphone in my hand to now holding the microphone in my hand and the windscreen. So who knows, by the end of the third or fourth time I sit down to do this, and consecutive times, I'm sure that I will look like that creature at the end of Labyrinth that has all of the crap on its back. Oh, you want to save that, don't you? Oh, you want that windscreen, don't you? Oh, here's a microphone stand, but don't attach it to anything. Who knows what it'll be? Who knows what will happen in the future? I am so excited that you're coming with me on this journey of 91 Reasons. Everyone has such a weird reaction when I tell them I'm working on this. It runs the gamut from my wife, who says I would never, ever listen to that because she has to listen to me all day, to people are like, everyone has a podcast. I guess why not you have a podcast? You certainly have a big enough mouth, so I am doing my podcast. So we're just going to keep it rolling here. Now, I've spent the last few times I've sat down here, I have talked about movies that really mean a lot to me, whether good or bad. And a bad movie can mean a lot to you, whether it's bad in a good way or bad in a bad way. And I also, I've done another episode where I talk about all the places that I've snuck into. And these are all in any order I decide. So I may be talking about an episode you've never heard or an episode that you heard a long time ago. But they're just, I'm trying to get as many banked as I can so that when I do launch, there's never a break. There's always an episode to put on so that I can be consistent. Because I know, as a person who subscribes to podcasts, the most infuriating thing is someone who says they're going to do a weekly podcast and you're ready on that Monday or Tuesday and there's no podcast. And if they come on and tell you why, like Chris Gore came on and said, hey, I've been having some issues, and as great as Podcrash is, it is a lot of work to do. It's not going to come out every week. I totally respect that. And after doing my own version of a podcast, I know exactly what he's talking about. This is a lot of work. You have to budget all this time to sit down and hammer out what you're going to say. Now, see, I don't do a lot of that. I don't do a lot of prep work. I've always been honest. There's no notes. I'm not on the internet while I'm doing this podcast. So anything that I reference is off the top of my head. So 98% of the time I'll be right, but there will be that 2% that I don't know what I'm talking about. And if you ask my wife, it's a much higher percentage of I don't know what I'm talking about. But I'm going to talk about something that's actually completely unrelated to the stuff I've talked about in the past. And I know it's all going to be factual because I lived it. I've told this story a lot. Every time I meet a new group of people and they want to know about me and why I'm so eccentric and so unique. Isn't unique a great word? It means a-hole in a good way. You're very unique. So I'm very unique. And the reason I'm very unique is I did not have the average upbringing. And I know everyone says, oh, well, there's no such thing as the average upbringing. The Norman Rockwell upbringing doesn't exist. Oh, I know that. But I didn't even get close to the Norman Rockwell upbringing, let me tell you. I'll go into my early years in another podcast because those are fascinating. But there's a lead up to that because I'm actually going to put some of that into a book. And I don't want to really get into it until I have a book to show for it. That being said, my mother was a unique person. Like how I did that. I love my mom. She died 1996, day after Christmas. She died. You know, she had some problems, but she was ultimately deep down. She was a good person. When she died at the funeral, I described my mom like this. I said, she's the kind of person that if you hit her, she'd go get ice for your hand. And everyone nodded because that's the way she was. Jackie was such a giver. She was involved in so many charities. And we were the kind of family that one Thanksgiving we were down at the church boxing up turkey and dressing and stuffing and Libby's canned pumpkin pie filling for needy families. And the next Thanksgiving, we were having a box delivered to us. It was a roller coaster growing up. But what makes it so unique was that my mother, for the most part, was a single mom. She raised us on her own. Now, she had people in her life. She had boyfriends. She even got married a time or two. But there was nobody there who was going to raise me and my sister and my older brother. So we were on our own with our mom. Even though there were men around, I've always considered my mother a single mother. She worked really hard. She worked at a finance company because she was really good with numbers. The woman was the church treasurer, did everybody's taxes, was a notary public. My mom did everything with numbers. Now, she wasn't always the best with money. There were many times where my sister sold candy bars for softball, and people would buy all the candy from her, and I'd see her spending that money. But she knew there was a deadline, and on date X, the candy bar money had to be turned in, even though I would beg her, don't use the candy bar money, Ma, because you're just going to get stuck with a big bill at the end. It didn't matter to her. She knew how to work it. So what I'm saying is she had a really good heart for people. She had a really good brain for numbers. But what she didn't have was any kind of logical sense when it came to love. And I think that I'm the reason for that. And I know that sounds a little egotistical, but let me get to it very, very briefly because I'm going to move past it very quickly. My mother grew up in Chattanooga. She met my father when she was very young, 2 or 3, and he was 22 or 23. So he was 20 years older than she was. He knew the family. He was from a very rich family. He told my mother's father, my grandfather, I'm going to marry Jackie one day. And I think she kind of counted on that because George, my father, he was a good man. And he was weak, but he was a good man. And he made good on that promise. And I think when she was 17 or 18, he actually dated her. Now, let's do the math, shall we? And remark that he was nearly 40 when he did that. And it didn't work out because he was an adult. And he was dating a young person. And the two worlds don't always mix. And we're talking about 1958, 1959. So the height of rock and roll and the older folks not understanding anything about the cultural shift and the birth of the American teenager that was about to take place. So consequently, they never got together. And my mother instead married a guy named Jim who moved her to California, had my brother, and when that didn't work out, she went back home to find George again. And that's where I came from. They never got married. His mother wouldn't allow it. He said that Jackie wasn't good enough to join the family and that them being Jewish and her being Methodist, it wasn't going to work out. And if George insisted on it working out, then he was going to be cut off from the money. See where I said he was weak? Because he didn't marry her. Now, they had me, so I'm thankful for that. And I'll get into the mechanics of that. But they didn't get married. And instead, my mother got married to another guy, a guy named Jerry, and she had my sister. So for keeping score, for those of you at home, get out your scorecards. Yes, we're talking about 3 men, 3 children, 2 marriages. Well, the marriage to Jerry was doomed from the start because as nice a guy as Jerry was, and he was nice to me, but I wasn't his kid, and he wasn't going to raise me the same way he was going to raise my sister. So I can remember very early on, anytime there was any kind of disagreement, Jennifer was always right in the eyes of her father. And I get that. You know, it was his kid, and I was just the other kid. I never had a father. My mother bounced around, and finally the marriage to my sister's father, it ended. It had to end. So but my mom, once again, she went back to Tennessee, back to Chattanooga to regather herself. And what happened was, I don't know if there was any attempt for her to get with George at that point. I think the relationship had soured to a point that George was getting up in years. We're talking a guy probably now in his 60s. And my mother just about to hit 40. So about to hit 60, about to hit 40. And I just think that, and this is just conjecture on my part or speculation, that he wasn't in the mood to deal with this woman who now had 3 kids, one of his, but 2 others and 2 broken marriages. So I don't know if that was ever an option. But my mother did go back to find her high school sweetheart. And this is where everything sort of went south. Because, boy, they'll tell you nowadays, there's so many internet memes about how getting back with your ex is going to work out so much better the second time, right? My mother she was an eternal optimist. She had a heart of gold, man. So she found this guy, Roger Doyle Rogers. Yes, his name was Roger Rogers. Vietnam vet, high school sweetheart from where my mother went to high school. I want to say Chattanooga High, but I don't think that's correct. But she found him all right, and he was living behind a Kroger grocery store next to a dumpster. Yeah, he was a drunk hobo of the nth degree. She saw in him, I assume, a project. And the reason I say assume is my mom didn't live long enough for me and her to have that conversation of me asking her, what were you thinking? What was going on in your brain that you brought this guy home? He was homeless. He was a drunk. He was a bum. And she brought him home. Now, our story that we're telling here wouldn't be that exciting if that's just where it ended. So you must know that something really crazy is about to happen. Because if it's just a woman bringing home her drunk high school boyfriend back to her home in California, it doesn't make for Lifetime TV movies, right? Or maybe it does. But it doesn't make for exciting Lifetime TV movie. No, in order for it to be exciting, in order for it to have that hook that all those Hollywood producers are looking for, he has to bring with him at least 10 of his idiot, homeless, drunk, hobo friends. You're hearing me correct. He went down to the river, and they had a makeshift camp. And he said, we're all going to California with Jackie. This really happened. I can remember this like it was yesterday. What happened was, it was a whole gamut of drunks, and I'll try to describe them all in a minute here. But he went down to the river. Now, one of them had a trailer. This guy, Otis. Yes, his name was Otis. And Otis was one of those homeless guys that looks like a skeleton, like he has no meat on his bones anywhere. You can see his skeleton. It looks like he's been shrink wrapped, right? We go to Otis's trailer, and Otis is making chili. And my sister and I think I'm 10, so it'd make her 7, or I'm 11 and she's 8. And I just remember being in this strange trailer with this man, and he's making chili. And he looks like a monster. And he kept saying to us, "You got to eat some of that chili. You grow big and strong like your Uncle Otis." And I said, "Uncle Otis isn't big and strong. Uncle Otis looks like he's about to die right now, today." So my mother left us with this guy. And she went and made all the arrangements to bring all the drunks home. So I just, as a parent now, I just can't even imagine leaving 2 young children in the care of a chili-making hobo like Otis. But I guess when you looked at all of them together, Otis seemed the most harmless. So we got in the station wagon. Yes, it was a station wagon with the rear-facing seat where I sat and pretended I was driving an AT-AT from Empire Strikes Back. So she brings us all back to California, and we now have a house full of drunks. We've got Roger Doyle Rogers, who's taken up residence in the master bedroom. There's Hub, short for Hubcap. And Hub never leaves. We had a bar with bar stools. Hub never leaves the bar because to him it feels like he's at a bar. So he smokes all day. He's the kind of guy that when you tell him a joke, he doesn't laugh. He goes, see now that windscreen's working. Yeah, there's Hub. There's GW, not W. If you call him GW, he'll say, "No, man, it's GW." Now, GW doesn't want to leave the river. He doesn't want to go to California. So when they force him to come out, GW sleeps in my backyard under the lemon tree because it reminds him of being on the river. Boy, am I painting the white trashiest picture you've ever seen. I know people are going to listen to this and go, "How did he make it?" But it does explain a lot of who the person I became, right? So GW sleeps outside. Then there's Otis. Now, Otis wasn't a permanent fixture at the house. Otis came and went. And the thing with Otis was that they were constantly putting him on Greyhounds back and forth to Chattanooga. I don't know what that was about. I was too young. But I assume it was probably to keep filing paperwork to get veterans benefits and Social Security. Because we also had Charlie. Now, Charlie was an old dude. Charlie was probably in his 70s. And Charlie sat in a recliner all day. And they would all drink to excess. And Charlie's problem was that he was so old and he had a cane, he couldn't always get to the bathroom. So Charlie crapping his pants was almost a weekly event that we all looked forward to. There was Terry. Terry was a good old boy, looked like one of the Oak Ridge boys. There was Randy. Randy was the youngest. Randy was just, I don't know what he was caught up in because I'm sure it was more than alcohol to be hanging out with these guys. And there was a few more that came and went. Like I said, there was a rotating cast of characters, but those were the main ones that stayed all the time. Was GW, Hub, Charlie, Roger Doyle Rogers, Otis, Terry, Randy. That's a lot of people. I had a bunk bed, and they put Randy in with me. Randy slept on the top bunk, and every morning Randy would get up and forget he was on the top bunk and jump out of bed. This was every morning. This was how I got up to go to school. So you have to understand, they're all completely broke. The reason they have Charlie around is that Charlie gets those checks sent right to the house. And the day Charlie's checks arrive, Dole runs down to Ralph's and gets as much plain wrapped beer as he can get. Remember the kind that had the little rebus under the cap? I had hundreds of them. We collected them. And I think what you have to understand moving forward is that when you're a kid, the life you are given is the life you accept. You think that when you watch TV that those families, those are fake. Nobody lives like that. I used to watch Silver Spoons. I didn't have a train in my living room. You are in the life you are in, and it is unfathomable that you can somehow trade it in for something else. I just assumed this was how people lived. It didn't occur to me that there was other ways. They were all drunks. They drank beer all day. Dole's alcohol of choice was Gallo port wine, so he really was a wino. And he would get a bottle of Gallo port every morning and drink it all day, straight from the bottle. He called it his bubbly pool. I know, right? You're all shaking your heads. This really happened. I know I keep butting in saying that, but as I'm saying it and putting it down as a record, normally I'm just talking to people and you're getting questions back and forth. This is me just talking, so it's weird to think like I'm putting this down as a record, right? So they all drank to excess as much as they could get, drank themselves blotto, like blackout drunk every night. Dole used to wake up in the morning, every morning, with the shakes. Now, again, I'm a kid. I have no idea what this is. I thought maybe adults just woke up shaky when they got older. I don't know. We used to make jokes like he was going to make milkshakes or something for us. I mean, this guy was really shaky. And it wasn't like we were being cruel because the guy had some sort of affliction. He had done this to himself. You know, him and Gallo port wine had done this to old Roger Doyle Rogers. And I'm sure that Vietnam didn't help, but I didn't understand that when I was a kid. So the other aspect of this that you have to understand was that they also smoked cigarettes. So Hub would sit at that bar all night, all day, smoking cigarettes, you know, and stuffing them out. Now, they used to buy Marlboro when they could afford it, but they weren't above plain wrap cigarettes. And this is back when Ralph's had plain wrap beer that said beer with a blue stripe and cigarettes with a blue stripe. Like it was no indication of any kind of labeling at all. It was plain wrap, right? But what you're missing is that what they would do is they would smoke cigarettes all week, and then every Sunday they would collect all the cigarette butts. And they would sit around like they were going to play poker, only they weren't playing cards. They were unwrapping the cigarettes and then using either rolling papers or, I'm not kidding you, Ralph's brown grocery bags to make more cigarettes. And they would, from those remnants, make 10 or 15 more cigarettes that they would then share. This is like being in prison, only there's no bars. This is just how hillbillies are, man. This is like, you know how they say Eskimos use every part of the whale? This is hillbilly using every part of the cigarette, the beer. I learned all the terms, man. Bubbly pool. I learned that the last bit of alcohol in a bottle is called a spider. You left a spider in there. They'd go, oh, man. And they'd, you know, shake the bottle so they get the last of it. But again, this is just reality. You know, I thought everybody's refrigerator had notes in it. There were notes on everything. My mother protected us like we were in a cocoon. There were certain, obviously, things you couldn't protect from. What I mean by that is the TV was always on either a sporting event or a John Wayne war movie. That's just the way it was. I didn't get a TV in my room until I was a teenager, and then I was like, I am never going out in the living room again. But my mother protected us, and one of the ways she did it was that we had the best school lunches ever. You know, my typical school lunch was a sandwich and a Hostess item, a can of Coke, and I think even like a candy bar and chips. Like it was like a full junk food meal. So when you opened our refrigerator, there were notes: kids lunch, kids lunch, kids lunch, and that was to remind these drunks, hey, stay out of the kids lunch. You know, get your own food. They were responsible for that. Now, eventually, Terry, one of the young guys, I think it was him and Randy that got a job. And they got a job at a door factory. It was either a door factory or it was simply a warehouse that sold doors. And other than providing income for actually, you know, working as a security guard at the door warehouse, they made a lot of money selling doors. My front yard overnight became filled with doors. Front doors of houses. And they had the kind with the little grate in the middle, beveled glass, plain doors, and people would drive up to the house, stop and go, are these doors for sale? And Terry or somebody would come out and like sell them a door for $20 or $30. I thought this was normal. I thought everybody had a door shop in their front yard, right? That was really odd. I mean, when you think about it now, it's like, talk about chutzpah of stealing the doors and putting them right in your front yard. It wasn't like they were, going out the back door and opening up their coat. I've got some very nice doors here, like watches. No, they put them right in the front yard, and they sold the doors right out the front door. Right out the front door. I do know that the minute Terry got the job at the door warehouse, our front door was gorgeous. We had a brown oak door with a peep window in it. I mean, it was beautiful. As far as stolen doors go, it was high quality. But I do remember asking for a favor that year, and this must have been, I'm going to say it's 83 maybe. So we moved up to 83. So I'm 11 or 12. I was 12 in 83 by the time Halloween came. And we used the doors that they had to make a haunted house in the front yard. My friend David Mandela and I took all the doors and arranged them into, we made a path, and you had to crawl at one point, and you had to find your way out of this maze of doors. And we ran that for Halloween night, and that was awesome. And that says a lot about what would happen to me in the future as far as Halloween goes, right? So maybe they're to blame and credit for what happened. I can tell you that watching each of these guys decay, and they did decay, Eventually Charlie died. He was already old to begin with. And an old guy who sits in his own filth all day, his days are numbered. So Charlie died of old age. Otis died of old age. And my mother was left with this guy Roger Doyle Rogers, man. And it's hard for me to know, because you don't know what your parents are up to. You really don't. And we were told that they got married and that she was now Jackie Rogers. But when she died, I didn't find any paperwork other than a few tiny things. I never found a marriage certificate that she married this fool. But we had begged her, because we're getting older. I'm becoming a preteen. My sister is. I remember my sister retreating to her father's house on the weekends, and then it became longer and longer, because who wants to hang around that? And as fussy as Jerry was, he must have just been beside himself that his ex-wife is now basically running a halfway house for Vietnam-era drunks. What a strange turn of events, What a bizarre way for things to become. But there were bright spots. Don't let me think. Don't let me talk and you think that it was a house of horrors, because it wasn't. Yes, there were horrific moments, such as when the school sent a letter home that we all had lice, and that we needed to go right now to the pharmacy and buy a special brand of lice shampoo. Everybody knows what I'm talking about, because everybody's gone through this, right? Well, hillbillies don't go to the pharmacy and buy lice shampoo. Hillbillies use what they have at the house. So I was held down, and my hair was washed with Pine Sol to kill the lice. And that, I've never forgotten it. I mean, it burned, it stung. I thought I was going to go blind from it. And when I look back, it's one of those moments where I vowed to be a better father, a better parent. My mother did her best, but there were moments of this is insanity. And the lice incident was chaos defined, because my sister had long hair. Had longer hair than I did. She had beautiful long hair. And I'm pretty sure that was the catalyst, because she went off to see her dad one time, and she came back and she'd cut it all off. My mother was livid. But what can you do? If you've had your head washed with Pine Sol, you would consider shaving your head to avoid ever having to do that again. And you know what? At that young age, if I'd been given the choice, hey, we're going to either shave your head or wash it with Pine Sol, I would have shaved my head. But I wasn't given that option. I was held down and told what I was going to do. So yes, there were bad moments to it. There were bad moments. These guys were drunks. They stumbled around. They fell. They passed out everywhere. Backyard, front yard, living room, toilet. Hey, you done in there? Oh, he's passed out. Hey, Dole, Otis is passed out on the toilet. Well, we'll go get him. Great. Isn't that great? But again, there were bright spots. I'm laughing already because I won the science fair at school. I got first place. How did I get first place? These guys helped me build a working moonshine still. So I could talk about all the scientific methods involved in distilling and making moonshine. It even had a little hillbilly doll next to it with a shotgun because the drunks told me you got to have the guy with the shotgun because nobody leaves their still unattended. Who knows what the school thought of that? Who knows? They did know that I was a straight A student. So it wasn't like I was suffering in grades and smoking cigarettes and hanging out. To me, and you can see why, I would rather have been at school. School was the escape for me. I got straight A's. I couldn't wait to go to school. My 7th grade year, I practically lived at the school. I had a teacher named Mark Benton who was my father that year. This guy took me in. He could see what was going on at my house, and I wish I could have switched families and moved in with him. He was a single guy, probably in his 30s. It's funny because nowadays you'd never allow that. Oh, a teacher's interested in a student that way? We got to call the police. But no, Mr. Benton was the nicest guy I'd ever known, and he really. I don't think if Mr. Benton hadn't come into my life, I would have made it. He was a guy who saw the writing on the wall and did his best to help. Now, I won the science fair. I got straight A's. And I think the lesson I learned from living with those kinds of people was in my adult life, I don't drink. I've never been drunk. I have no desire to. I don't understand the appeal of losing your brain. And I'm not condemning it because I love going to parties. I have no problem with people drinking. I'm of the opinion you can do whatever you want to your body. I don't care. It's just not for me, You can watch soccer and football. It's just not for me. And I equate cigarettes and smoking and drugs and alcohol with simply, it's just not my thing. I can see how it could be your thing, and maybe you have some issues you have to deal with, but I don't need it. And as I get older and look back, it becomes very clear to me I saw the end result of a lifetime of excess. These drunk guys were guys that never said no to anything. If it was free and it allowed them to escape their existence, they took it. And my mother was like that to a degree as well. When I get into my convention podcast, whether you've heard it before or it's coming up in the future, you'll hear about Mom trying to send me off to the Star Wars 10th anniversary convention with a Sucret's tin of uppers in case I wanted to stay up longer and enjoy the convention. I politely declined it. I'm just not that guy. I never was. I was never a teenager that experimented with that. I just didn't see the point. I kind of wish I had, because I know a lot of people who do drugs and drink, they don't remember things. And maybe I'd be happier if I didn't remember all this the way that I do. But, hey, here we are. Here we are at the 30-minute plus mark of me talking about these drunks. So it sort of ended with a whimper. And the whimper was, one by one, the drunks went back to Tennessee. And this was a circle, like I've told you, where they would go to Tennessee. They'd get that Tennessee air in their lungs. And then they'd end up back at our doorstep 3 weeks later, right? Well, what started to happen was they would go back to Tennessee and they would die. So they weren't coming back. The old guys, they died of liver failure. They died of old age. They died of cancer. Terry, one of the young guys, he fell in a rock quarry. He got so drunk, he fell in a rock quarry. Now, I've seen rock quarries. They're pretty big. You'd have to be really stupid and really drunk to fall into one. But hey, look who we're talking about. I don't know what happened to Randy. Randy probably ended up in prison. Hub, GW, they died. Roger Doyle Rogers, I think, was the last one to live, you know. As in the case of many Hollywood movies, the villain's the last one to go. And he finally died of liver failure. And I couldn't have been happier. What a great day that was. You know, Mom sits me down and she goes, I need to tell you that she must have been solemn about it. But she said, you know, honey, Roger Doyle Rogers died. Dole died. I was like, okay, what's for dinner? Like, I didn't care. I don't have any emotion for these people other than bewilderment of how I existed through it all, you know? These are the guys that we got a Betamax and they would tape the Super Bowl so they could watch it over and over again. So not only do we have to endure a single football game, but a single football game like 10 times on beta to where you even knew the commercials that were coming up. These guys were nuts, man. We sold doors. We made a moonshine still. We drank a lot of beer. They made friends with the guy who owned a bar down the street called Topper. And when I say a bar, I'm talking about a dive. Like peeling plaster walls and black paint to make it appear even darker. And somehow they figured out that this Topper, the guy who ran the Topper bar. Now, Topper was connected to McCoy's Market. If you know in Norwalk at all, it's actually, it became Crawford's Market. But before it was Crawford's, it was McCoy's. And when it was McCoy's, it wasn't a big complex. It was a small little market that had like a flower shop connected to the front and a Mexican food place. And then it had a Chief Auto. And then it had this scary, scary bar. And they would go to this bar all the time, you know, because when you're drinking, sometimes you need a change of pace, right? They convinced this guy that on Sundays they should serve breakfast. So we used to go to the bar, Topper, and sit in a bar booth on Sunday morning and eat biscuits and gravy and eggs. Only they didn't call them biscuits. They called them cat heads. I have no idea why. Must be a local colloquialism from Tennessee. You're going to finish those cat heads. The first time I was like, what? Cat heads? The biscuits. Why don't you just call them biscuits? They're cat heads. Great. But that's that hillbilly can-do spirit, right? We once went grunion running. You ever been grunion running? That's where you go down to the beach at like midnight and you wait and the grunion run and they come up to the shore and they burrow in and they lay their eggs and they go back out. And once they lay their eggs, they're free game and you just grab them with your hand and you throw them in a pot. Now, it's a fun thing to see. And it's really fun to pick up the fish because you're just not used to being able to just reach down and pick up a fish, right? But I know that most people just throw them back in the water. They hold them and they throw them back in the water. You couldn't tell these drunks that. You couldn't tell them that, hey, the fish are going to jump in your hand and you're supposed to throw them back. No. They got as many fish as they could in barrels, and they brought them home and they cooked them. Now, if you've ever seen a grunion's not that much bigger than what a generic sardine is. They used to cook them. They would roll them in cornmeal and flour and then deep fry them and then eat them. Now, there's no meat on these things. But hey, I've had grunion. Have you? It was grunion. It's what's for dinner. And in my house, there was one thing for dinner. If you didn't eat it, you were out of luck. Thankfully, from the South, it was mostly fried chicken and stuff my mom made, fried okra. We ate all that Southern stuff. But yeah, it was just a weird life of seeing things in a different way, like seeing a grunion run as a way to get food, or I don't even know how to describe beyond what I've said, you know, all these drunks, man. I think I might even have a picture or two. I will try to dig those up and put them on the Facebook just so you can see what I'm talking about. I'd never seen a man whose eyes had blood in them. And I don't mean like, oh, there's a lot of red lines, his eyes are bloodshot. Dole used to, he'd have blood in his eyes. Like he would drink so much, his body would just freak out in the craziest ways. And one of those ways was he actually just would have blood in his eyes. Not like oozing blood, like behind the clear part of your eye. Like, it was unsettling. You'd stare at him and he looked like a ghoul, a monster. And he had his hair done up like Darren on Bewitched. You know, that real glossy Brill cream look. I mean, that was how we grew up. That was the look. He was really vain in that way. He always had a pocket comb, and he wasn't the kind of guy you looked up to. Like, he wasn't like, Mom brought home this guy and he's going to show me how to fish. It was more like you played a game of just staying away from him, because he had mood swings, and he could be laughing and joking with you one minute, and the next minute, you know, like Joe Pesci in Goodfellas, just turn, and all of a sudden he'd be angry about something, and he wasn't joking. So my sister and I we became pretty close because we were in this together. My brother had moved out by this point. My brother had seen this nonsense, and he was gone. But my sister and I, we didn't have a choice. You know, I had my Star Wars toys, and Jennifer had her Barbie dolls, and we escaped into toys, and we escaped into school, and Jennifer escaped to her father, like I said. But it was a really strange way to grow up, you know. You don't question the life that you're given, because it's just reality. And you just deal with it. And I want to say that going through that made me a better person. It made me a sober person, but I don't know if it made me a better person. I would have traded it in for almost anything. It wasn't fun. It wasn't any kind of fun to grow into. But when I talk about what came after the drunks, it'll make the drunks seem like a picnic, because the drunks, Roger in particular, Roger Doyle Rogers, he wasn't out to get me. Like, he didn't have an agenda. He was just there. And if you crossed him, you got what you got. You know, and I got smacked a few times. I'm not going to lie to you. That was what people did back then, you know. When you were a kid growing up in the 70s and early 80s, if you got out of line, you got smacked. And this guy could clock you. He had big, like, Sin City Marv hands, right? He looked a little bit like Sin City Marv, now that I think about it. But you got clocked. But he wasn't out to get you. There was no wake up and how can I mess with Jeff today. That would come with my mother's next boyfriend, because what happened was Dole went back to Tennessee and he died. So he was gone. He wasn't coming back. And my sister and I think it was about 9 or 10 months, we got a break. For 9 or 10 months, they were great. We had our mom back. We only had our mom. And those were good times, you know. And my brother decided to fix her up with the father of one of his friends. And any illusion that we had it bad with the drunks was shattered when Don Berg came into our lives. So yeah, let's describe Don Berg, shall we? Don Berg was about 5'7", 5'8", maybe 5'9" at the most. He had that Brill cream hair, like all guys of that generation did. You know, they spent all that time putting that crap on their head and combing it and combing it and combing it and combing it. And the thing with Don is that you're not going to believe this. Don wore like coveralls like all the time. That's what he wore. That was his outfit of choice, was coveralls. And usually they were ripped beyond repair. And the thing with the coveralls, you know, like Cooter on Dukes of Hazzard, you know. But they were always ripped, so I swear to God, there were some times where the rip would be so bad you could see his butt cheeks hanging out the back. And he gave off almost a comical vibe. And it might have been funny, because here, I'll describe some more about him. he had a hearing aid, which is not funny in so much as it made him talk differently because he was partially deaf.
So he would talk like this. This is Don Berg. This is my kind of stepdad, Don Berg. So he talk like this.
And when I get into the meat of what this guy's deal was, you'll find that I slip into that voice without even thinking about it because it's such a part of who I am and what happened to me and what transpired to make me the person that I am today. But the other thing with Don's hearing aid is that you have to know that Don was incredibly cheap. He might be the cheapest person I have ever met. And we're talking a guy that would bring home stuff he dug in the trash, and not like a chair, but there were chairs, obviously. But I'm talking food. Like, he would bring home food from the trash. He knew when the grocery stores were going to throw stuff out, he'd bring it home. Now, my sister and I would never eat it, ever. He could bring home, like, boxes of like, ice cream cones, like, what are those things called with the nuts on the top, He'd bring those home, like, I don't want anything to do with it, dude. This came out of the trash. The date is beyond recognition, And imagine the kind of ninja stealth it takes to get ice cream out of the trash. Because what does it have? What does it have? 15 or 20 minutes before it's soup, Before it's gone. So he's laying in wait to bring that stuff home to us. Like he's some sort like he's the lion in Lion. He's Mufasa bringing home the fresh kill of Rondo ice cream treats and stuff. And no, thank you. No, you can keep it. You can have it all. I don't want it. But because he was cheap, he would never buy new hearing aid batteries. And what happens to a hearing aid when you don't replace the battery enough or often enough, it beeps. It beeps all day. So the noise of my house would just be this all day. All day it would beep. And my mother, she would just yell at, Donald, you're beeping again, Donald. And he would, he would dial it down like, so he couldn't hear it. He'd dial down the hearing aid. We could still hear it, dude. So, let's check off the list here. Brill cream hair, coveralls, couple of days growth. Sometimes he'd have a beard, but more than not, it would just be stubble because he's too lazy to shave. And when he did shave, he had a really close resemblance to Hitler. Now, when I talk later about what he did to me, you're going to think, you're just imagining that. But I'll put a picture up. And the guy kind of looked like Hitler. Remember that show Spitting Image in the 80s where it was an English show where they had puppets? Like if they had Hitler on Spitting Image, that's what Don Berg would look like, right? He would look like Hitler, like sort of a caricature of Hitler, But my mom brought this guy home, and he wined and dined her. Like, he wined and dined her in the beginning. He spent a lot of money on her. So it was kind of like, like when the cable company gives you free channels for a couple of months and you're like, this is the greatest thing ever. And then eventually you go, I got to pay for this. Well, we paid for his whining and dining, and we paid with our souls, man. Now, don't get me wrong. I wasn't abused in any way. Hey, you could listen to what I have to say and think it's abuse, Again, what I said about Roger Doyle Rogers applies here in that the reality that you're given is just what you accept, right? The difference with Don was that I wasn't a little kid anymore. This guy showed up when I was 14, 15, and he lasted all the way through, my late 20s, almost. Yeah, early 20s, maybe 25. So I did a decade-long stint with Donald Alfred Berg. This is a guy that I don't know whether he's alive or dead. I really don't care. I always told him that I had time on my side when we argued, and he would be screaming at me over something, and I never let what he was arguing about bother me. So I would find ways to combat him, and one of the ways I did was I would just look at him and go, I'm going to outlive you, dude. I'm going to outlive you, and I'm going to dance on your grave. And that, I was brought up in the church. We went to church a lot. For a guy like me to turn into that kind of person in an argument, you must have known that the argument was bad. So I think I think what Don's problem was, or not problem, what Don's philosophy was, he came from another time, you know. If he was probably 50 in the 80s. So you're talking about a guy born in the 30s. And people born in the 30s had a different mindset, you know. The Great Depression really changed that generation. And they were taught hard work, that kids were supposed to do chores all day. The concept of fun was not in this guy's mindset at all. Like, there was no fun at all. Fun was for older, much older adults. And if he saw kids having fun, i.e. me and my sister, he lost his mind. And how it manifested itself was he would just pick fights. He would pick fights about everything. And it's weird when I look back, like, it's not even looking back. I knew in it. I knew in the thick of it, like, this is not normal. Because I was a good kid, especially in high school. I got straight A's. I did all the plays. I've never done drugs. I've never smoked cigarettes. I've never drank beer or alcohol. I played Dungeons and Dragons, and I went to the movies, and I went to conventions. And the idea that every day I came home was a battle over what a terrible person I was really wore you down. It's a miracle I survived. It's a miracle I survived because, you know, in this day and age, the way people are, if you take a teenager who's doing all the right things and still not getting approval from the adults around him, those kids snap. You know, it's a wonder I just didn't snap and kill this man. And I know that's strong. God, is that strong language to say, right? But it's so true. Like, looking back, it is amazing I didn't just snap. And I'll give you some examples. So he moved in probably a few months later, you know. My mother was one of those women who just could not be alone for any extended amount of time. And God, did I know that at the end, because when she finally got the gumption to leave Don Berg, she was dead within a year. She could not, I mean, obviously there was some other extenuating circumstances, but a lot of it is psychological, you know. And my mother needed broken men in her life. So Don moved in and everything changed, you know. The TV was his. Whatever he wanted to watch, that was what we watched. And that's just, I know that's just typical, right? But you're talking about a time when having a TV in your bedroom was a real rarity. So I can remember turning 16 and getting a first job, and like the first thing I bought was a TV. Even if it took the whole check, I had to have a TV because I was going to watch what I wanted when I wanted. Because this guy, he worked odd hours, and he was always home. It just seemed like he was always there, you know, just in a chair watching TV and then looking for fights. I didn't listen to loud music. I didn't play loud music very often, you know. He would just look for things to fight, and it was weird. I'll give you an example. I know I've been saying that, but I'll give you an example. Here's a typical exchange between me and Don Berg. And I had friends who were there who witnessed some of these, and even they were like, "What's going on at your house?" I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. The devil has moved in. You know, who knew the devil had a mustache? I mean, we knew he had the little thing on his chin, but just the mustache? Yeah, there he is. But, for example, I went in the kitchen one time to wash my hands in the sink, and he followed me in, and he said, "You're not going to wash your hands in that sink." I was like, well, yeah, I am. No. You go in the bathroom to wash your hands. The sink in the kitchen is just for dishes. It's just for dishes. And I'm washing my hands, and now it's a power thing. He doesn't want me to do it, and I'm going to do it. And it seems frivolous. So I started washing my hands in the sink. And he took a cup and filled it with water, and he threw it at me. And I just stood there, and I took it until I finished washing my hands. And that was when my buddies were like, "What's going on?" I was like, "I don't know, man." Another time, see, one of the big things he used to do when he was arguing with me is he would use, it wasn't for him. Whatever the thing that he was trying to get me to do, it wasn't for him. It was for my mother. So one time he came in and he had gotten a bunch of lemons from somewhere. Now, we had a lemon tree in our backyard. They might have come from there. But I know he had like a lot of lemons. And we're talking like 100 or more lemons in a big basket, right? And he comes in, he goes, your mother wants you to squeeze the lemons. I was like, what? You know, I'm hanging out with all my friends. Gotta go in there and squeeze those lemons. I was like, I'm not in a mood to squeeze lemons right now. You're gonna go down, you gotta do it. You gotta go squeeze those lemons. And he'd get really angry. And I was like, I'm not squeezing those freaking lemons, man. What do you want with squoozing lemons for anyways, man? He was making lemonade or something. And he just had this idea, like, I'll go sit and watch TV while Jeffrey goes up and squeezes the lemons. Well, I wasn't going to squeeze the lemons. So I just left. And these fights went on because he couldn't fight with me about grades or going to... I love going to school. He couldn't fight about that. So he would walk around the house and he would just find things to fight about. And this went on for years and years. And when I talked about the drunks living there, and I talked about how we used to put notes in the refrigerator, right? Everything in the refrigerator had a note on it. You know, kids' lunch, right? That's just the way it was. And I never thought I'd have to be one of those guys who locked up his bedroom. Like, you know, the heavy metal kids, like, they got the posters on the wall and the music, and they're probably smoking pot. So they put that big hinge lock on their door and a big padlock. And you know that if your parents went in, they're going to bust it down. But the whole point is you need to know if they've been in there, right? Well, I was never one of those guys. Like, what have I got to hide? You know, issues of Starlog. So one day I wake up and he's rifling through all my stuff. And I was like, what are you doing in here? Oh, no, you stole that money. I'm like, I didn't steal any money. I wouldn't steal anything. I'm the most honest guy you've ever met. No, I know that you stole the money. And he's rifling through all my stuff looking for, like, you know, a wad of cash with a rubber band around it because he knows I'm into something. Well, he didn't find it. And he didn't apologize. So the next day, I went out and I bought one of those giant locks. I put it on my door, and I was like, dude, you're not in my room. I'm going to put one on the other side, too. I don't want you anywhere near my stuff. When I was real young, I got one of those books that's things you can send away for in the mail, all kinds of free stuff. So I used to send away for all kinds of stuff, you know, like a Smokey Bear map of the mountains, or you know, all these pamphlets the government was sending. It was a really cool book, and I got on all these mailing lists, so I would get all these bizarre things in the mail for free. One time I got, you know, those stickers, but they're metal, and they put them on stuff. They're like, you can label all of your stuff, and people will know who it belongs to. Well, I didn't buy any, but I had all these sample stickers. So I took one and I put it on the TV, and it said "Property of Holiday Inn." Well, this is a TV that's been in my room like 3 years. He comes up and he's like, "I'm gonna call the motel." I go, "You're gonna call the motel?" "Yeah, I know. You stole that TV from the motel." And I said, "Are you stupid? That sticker came in the mail free. I didn't steal it. I go call them. Please call them and let them know the TV they're looking for is here. They're gonna hang up on you." He just loved to just gouge any way he could with whatever argument he could come up with, and even more than that. Like, I don't want to sound like, oh, poor Jeff. He was put upon his whole teenage life. Because we've all seen The Great Santini, right? It happens. This happens to people. This guy collected junk. Remember I said he was from the Great Depression era? They didn't throw anything away. This guy saved everything. When he moved in, you know, when the drunks were living there, our backyard was green. We had a swing set. We had, the only weird thing we had was the drunks had dug a hole and made a barbecue pit for making barbecue. They might have used it twice, right? But it was a nice backyard. I have pictures of me in the backyard for my sister's birthday party where I'm like DJing, and it's not that long before Berg moved in, you know, or may have been when Berg had just moved in, right? But this guy was a collector, and he collected everything: cans, bottles, chairs, bags of junk. But the most important thing that he collected was vehicles. Now, he owned property out in Lake Elsinore. He owned like 5 or 6 acres in Lake Elsinore, and it's covered in vehicles. He has hundreds of rotting cars, right? Well, we had a backyard. It's a perfect storage area. So before long, not long after old Bergie moved in, he parked an RV in our backyard and told my mom they were going to fix it up and they were going to drive the country. That RV never went anywhere. It never went anywhere. And then he put a truck back there. And then he put a car back there. All in a backyard. So the weeds grew up. The grass and the weeds grew up around him, right? And one summer, he tells me, you got to go out there because it's infested with fleas, so we can't put the dog out in the backyard. So we can't put the dog out there because there's fleas. Now you step out, and the fleas, they just start jumping on you. Like suddenly, you look like a Dalmatian. There's so many black dots all over you, right? It's an infestation in the backyard at the height of summer. So he tells me I got to go out there and I got to use one of those Ortho Man spray things. You know, you sling it over your shoulder, you pump it a few times, and then you have that wand and it sprays flea killer everywhere, right? So I got to do it. This guy's telling me I have to do it. My mom's like, do it for me. Don't do it for him. You're doing it for me. I'm like, yeah, sure, Ma, sure. Why are we doing it anyways? No one goes out here anymore. This is no man's land. Anyways, I go out, and I'm trying to spray, and I can't because the fleas are, every time you go out there, you're covered in fleas, right? So I come back in. I put on, long sleeve pants, tuck them into the short, into the socks. I put on a long sleeve shirt. I go out. Still, there's no escape from the fleas. The minute you go out there, you are fair game. So you know what he tells me to do? And this is what I did. You go out there, and you spray the grass, and then you spray yourself. So I'm spraying the grass, and then my legs and my torso and my arms with flea killer, with bug killer spray. This made getting your hair washed out in Pine Sol a walk in the park, man. It's weird. Like I can remember doing it like it was yesterday. Like I've said before, I have a really good memory. I remember almost everything that's happened to me. You can attribute that to OCD, or not doing drugs, or whatever, or not drinking alcohol, whatever. I can remember spraying it like it was yesterday. And when I think about it, first, I'm amazed that I have children, because I cannot believe that didn't render me sterile. And then second, it's like, what was my mom doing? Because we had a big glass door. Like, they're watching me do this in between the vehicles. I don't know how you do that. As a parent, I couldn't do it. I couldn't send my kid out there to do that. Yet there I was, spraying myself down with flea killer. And the ironic part is, it probably didn't even do anything, because we never had picnics out there again. That crap inhabited that yard until the day we moved in '92. So it's not like it was doing anything. Another time, same backyard. Like I said, we had a lemon tree growing. We had one on the left and a smaller one on the right. Now the one on the right got big, and it started growing all the way up to the power lines. So now the city never came out. It's not like we got a written warning from the city, like you better clean this up, man. It wasn't like that. But his thing, and when we get to street sweeping, you'll understand. His thing was that he was going to do it so, like, if the city came by, they would congratulate him. Like, oh, Mr. Berg, you've done a fantastic job for the city. Thank you. So it needed to be trimmed. He wasn't going to hire anybody to do it. Not when you have a teenage boy living at home. I'm perfect for everything. Squeezing lemons. Killing bugs. Chopping trees down. So he went out in the backyard. He took a ladder, and he put it about 6 feet up into the crotch of the tree. And then I got up on the ladder. So I was up about 18 feet in the air on the top of a ladder, cutting limbs with a little clipper, swaying back and forth. Like, it was one step away from being a goofy cartoon, right? And I can just imagine my mom standing there like, here's her son, who one day is going to graduate with honors, and he's going to die because the lemon tree is too tall. What would it have cost in 1987 to have somebody come out and cut that lemon tree? Maybe $50? Maybe? Is that a too small price? Certainly cheaper than a broken leg, broken arm, or a concussion. And that I think that took about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. I was up on that ladder. And I just remember being up top thinking, I'm going to die. Like, this is my own mortality. I'm going to die today. I didn't die, you know. It didn't kill me. That which does not kill you only makes you stronger, right? Gosh, if that were the case, my skin would be steel. So, this is who Don was. This is what he did. And the only breaks we got were he would take my mother to... One time he took her to Hawaii. It was her dream of all dreams to go to Hawaii. So he took her to Hawaii for like 2 weeks. And it was great because I was like 15 and my sister was 13. And we just had the house. It was, you know... We had already been self-sufficient due to the drunks. We could make any kind of food we wanted on our own. Think about that now, though. Think about would a parent go all the way to Hawaii, leaving? To be fair, I think she left somebody with us who was there about 20 minutes a day. How you guys doing? Fine. All right, gotta go. We don't need anybody. Mom, you have taught us to be self-reliant. We need no one in our lives. Thank you. And then the other thing they did was during the summer, they would drive cross country to Tennessee where all our relatives were, and along the way he would buy a trailer, this thing that had wooden sides. It wasn't like a nice trailer. It was like Sanford and Son, and along the way they just fill it with antiques, and they would keep some and sell some. And I know when they went back to Tennessee, my two aunts, my mom's sisters, were just, who is this man? Why would you bring this man here, you know? But we got a break while he was gone. You know, we got a nice break. But, and then I think one of the big problems with Don was that he didn't like that I wasn't the kind of guy, the kind of young man he thought I should be, you know. I didn't play sports. I didn't watch sports. I was into drama. He was convinced I was gay, and that really bothered him. And it just was a really weird scene of like, when I turned 15, 16, I'd already managed to get out of the house as much as I could. But gosh, when finally you find that friend who's got a car, you're gone. And I was gone, man. I didn't come home but to go to bed and then get right back up, you know. I did not want to be at home. There was nothing there. It was not fun. Being around Don Berg was not fun. I can't recall any good times. It's not like, oh, there was this and that. No. With Don, every day was hell. This guy, all he did was, you know, like how the Terminator does that, and he scans you like, I need your clothes, you're the right size. Don would scan for fights. What's out of place? What can I argue? You're not going to believe this, but he one time he got a parrot, and I think he got it really cheap because I think the parrot was brain damaged. Because every parrot, even by accident, somehow talks, right? This bird never spoke. It screeched, but it never talked, and it was a big green, you know, T-shirt looking parrot. You know, the kind you see on a T-shirt, like a Jimmy Buffett looking parrot, right? And he named it Yacky. Oh, he named it Yacky, right? And he would sit in a chair with this stupid bird on his finger, and he would go, hello, 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 for like an hour. And he thought that the bird was going to someday just look at him and go, hello. The bird never talked. This bird never uttered a sentence. It either had the sense to stay quiet, or again, it was just brain damaged. But you can imagine, like, trying to get stuff done with this idiot in the house going, hello, 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 hello. Like if I wrote that in something, you wouldn't believe me. You'd go, there's no way that's real. But that's what it was. And then it's okay. So one day he comes home, and the bird is gone. Bird's not on its perch, right? And He's steaming, man. And by the time I get home, it just explodes. I know, you open the door and you let the bird go, and now the bird's gone. And he thought I had just like had enough, and there's no way to get back at him, so I'm going to open the sliding glass door, and I'm going to let the bird go, right? It's so out of character for me as to be ridiculous, right? And yet, here we are, and this fight raged for about 3 hours. 3 solid hours of him pointing and screaming, and my mother next to him going, if you just let it go, just tell him, and we can go look for it. We don't know what we're going to do. I was like, I didn't let the bird go. I wouldn't do that. Oh, no, that you let the bird go. Just tell him where the bird is, Jeffrey. Do it for me. Just tell him. Just tell him. I didn't let the bird go, Ma. I have nothing to do with this bird. I don't care that you got a bird. It doesn't bother me. When he's talking to the bird, he's not yelling at me. So the bird is actually my friend, okay? 3 screaming hours of where the bird is, right? And I'm not joking. The bird casually walks out from under the bed. It had got under the bed and had ripped open the lining and had just made a nest or something, right? So the bird walks out. This is what you have to understand. This is what happened. So, I stole the bird. You took the bird and you threw it outside. You took it for a drive and the bird's gone. I didn't take the bird. I got nothing to do. Just tell him where the bird is. If you just tell him where the bird is, everything will be fine. You can do it for me. Hey, Mom, isn't that the bird coming out from under the bed? Oh, yucky bird. Hello? 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 I looked at my mom. I looked at Don Berg. I looked at the stupid bird. And I said, I'm sorry. Hey, sorry, Jeff. Sorry for 3 hours of screaming at you about the bird. Hello? Hello? I said, Ma, is he going to say he's sorry? I said, he just accused me for 3 hours of doing something to this bird, and it's on his hand. No. The fight just stopped. He just walked away. And I looked at him and I said, this is what's wrong with this man. Everything he does is right, and everything everybody else does is wrong. And even when he's wrong, there's no consequence. I said, this is insanity. This is the definition of insanity. 3 hours, and the bird's under the bed. I'm done. I'm out of here. I cannot wait to get out. Oh my God. When I got a girlfriend, finally, I was gone. I lived at her house, man. I got out of school by then. So, 1989, I graduated from high school. And this was a big moment because I was the only kid out of 3 to walk the line with the mortarboard and the whole bit. To me, that was what's expected of you. So, the idea that you could drop out and not graduate didn't even occur to me, right? So my mom's just as proud as can be. I'm with all of my very best friends, and we're excited because we're graduating, school is over, and more importantly, Batman is playing that night at a midnight sneak preview night, and this was the greatest day ever. And I look up. Now, I didn't expect Don Berg to come to my graduation. I certainly didn't want him there. You don't invite the devil anywhere. If you've seen Fright Night, it had all been fine if he hadn't invited the vampire into his house, because they can't come in unless you invite him. So I wouldn't have invited this guy, right? And he showed up. He showed up at my graduation wearing my school colors. He was wearing bright purple pants and a bright gold shirt. And he was all happy, like he had just taken some drugs or something. Oh, Jeff's got a graduate. Now, I don't think any of his kids graduated. Everybody associated with my brother was a dropout. My sister wasn't going to graduate, 2 years behind me. She'd already dropped out, I think. So here I was, the only one, the only game in town. And this guy's like having a party. I have pictures. I'll try to post them. I can remember being very bewildered. I was like, this guy spends all his day making my life miserable, and he's going to come and sort of celebrate with me? This isn't right. I don't want him here. I want him to get hit by a bus today. That's what I was thinking. So it was weird, right? But then once I got a girlfriend, like I was saying, I was gone. I had a job, and I would go to work, and after work, I would go to my girlfriend's house and hang out with her fam. I would go even if she wasn't there. There were times where she wasn't even around. She was away at, at cheerleader camp or something, and I would still be at the house because I didn't want to be home. I don't want to be home with this guy. I was at an age where I was done taking any kind of grief from him, you know. As a kid, you take it because you have no alternative. But I was older. And I'm not saying I'm going to fight the guy because I'm just not that guy. You know, I don't want to have a physical altercation with anybody. And I can say, at the age I'm at now, I've really never had a fight with anybody. I don't want to have a physical fight. I'm not that guy, you know. But I didn't want to deal with him. And then in '92, my mom found this amazing house in Buena Park. And it reminded her of all the houses back in the South. So she went out of her way to like get this house. And we all moved in, and it had 11 bedrooms. So it had enough for everybody in my family to have a room. And my mother thrived on chaos. Gee, can you tell? She thrived on chaos. And we all lived in this house on Beach Boulevard. And we even had, you know, people renting rooms, and the whole family was under one roof. But even as I got older, even as I finally met Rachel and was going to get married, the nonsense with this guy never ended. It never ended. But I learned, because, you know, I got older and I got wiser. And I learned that you were never going to win an argument with Don Berg. He was always going to be right. And if the bird thing hadn't taught me that, nothing was going to. He's right about everything in life. So I had a new tactic. I would argue gibberish. And he didn't know what to do because he couldn't process it. He thought maybe his hearing aid was acting up. Plus, he didn't understand any kind of absurdity, which, hey, that's my forte, man. So here's a typical exchange with Don Berg. You got to go out there and you got to move your car. Got to move your car for the street sweeper. I know, I will. I'll go move the car. Go do it right now. Well, I'm not going to do it right now. I got something to get out there and move that car, or the street sweeper's going to come by. Hey, listen, I would love to, but I got a couple of frogs, and I got these frogs, and I'm taking them out to dinner, and it's like, you know, it's Kermit and Miss Piggy, and he would go, whoa, what? And his finger would go right to his hearing aid, like something was wrong. What? And that became how I argued. I used to have a running gag with him about how I had a lot of Volkswagens and they weren't running properly, and he would just Volkswagen, what? And then it became fun. Once he had no power over me, once I had a job, and there was another weird thing where he thought if you had a job, you were supposed to come home and just hand your check to your parents. You know, if they gave you money back, that was fine. It was like, dude, I worked really hard for this money. I'm not handing it over. I gave my mom money for staying there and stuff, but I wasn't just going to hand over the check. And this is like from 16 on, because I had a job the day I turned 16. I was working. And he just expected the checks to come right over to him, and I was like, this is not happening. I have to steal a TV from Holiday Inn, and to do that, I got to check into the hotel room, right? Yeah, right. So I just learned to be stupid with him, and then he got nastier. He tried to find new ways to get angry with me, or to make me angry. One time I got nominated for this big acting award, and it was a big deal to be nominated because the finals were in San Francisco, and the college paid for us all to go up there and compete. Now, I didn't win. You know, I think there were 900 people who went, and like 3 won. So I had no illusions that I was going to win. But, oh, man, when I came home, he used it as ammunition forever. Whatever I did wrong, or his perception of being wrong, turned into, and that's why you didn't win that big award. And I'm like, what is he even talking about? How does this have to do with not winning an acting award? And there were even times where, like, even in the worst of times, there are moments of just being normal. I almost used the word civil, but I don't think he was ever civil to me. But there were times when you're normal, right? So when we lived on Beach Boulevard, it was a commercial area. So if your car is parked out on the street the day of street sweeping, now if you do it at home, you get a ticket, right? I mean, you have to know what day the street sweeping is, otherwise you get a big ticket. We knew what day the street sweeping came on Beach Boulevard, but they didn't give tickets. They just didn't sweep they just didn't clean the street, right? So I can remember coming in one day, and Don's sitting there, and I said, "Hey, Don, I just want to warn you, the street sweeping is going to come tomorrow, and you've got your truck out front." Now, to me, I'm just trying to be helpful. To him, all he heard was warning. And he got deadly serious with me like in a second, and he goes, "Don't you warn me about anything, punk." And I said, "No, I think you're misunderstanding me. I'm just letting you know that the street sweeper is going to come." "Don't you warn..." I said, "All right, I won't warn you. I'm done. I don't care if the street gets clean. It means nothing to me in my life, right?" So the next day I go out, and he hasn't moved his truck. And I think he didn't move. I mean, he could have moved it because he's up. He didn't move it because he's proven a point to me. And he was out there with a broom, and he was sweeping the street, around the truck to show you that this is what you do when if the street sweeper's not gonna do it, you gotta do it yourself. So Don could be, I don't know. The last I saw of Don was at least a decade ago, and he was in a wheelchair at a swap meet. And I desperately wanted to go up and just start punching him in the face, but my wife told me that's not appropriate. I can say that the fights were legendary. They were loud. They went on for a long time. I'm just giving you the Cliff's Notes, but this is what I went through with this guy. And there were times where I told him I was going to pee on his grave. "Well, that's the joke's on you, because I'm going to be cremated, punk." So I would tell him, "Well, you know what, dude? I'm going to be there when you get cremated. I got times on my side, dude. You're old, and you're angry. And guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to get some of your ashes, and I'm going to wear them as a necklace." "Don't you... Oh, Jackie, you tell him..." "But don't do it. Just stop, Don. Just stop." And it would just go on and on. I would give anything for a video of one of our fights. Now, I do have a little bit of video of him vacuuming in just tiny shorts, which is terrifying, because this is not an attractive man. He is hairy like Robin Williams. You could braid his back hair. That's how hairy this guy was. But eventually, like with the drunks, now he didn't die, but we finally convinced my mom that she had to leave him, that he was no good, that all his talk of things he was going to do for her were worthless. When he met my mom, our house in Norwalk was nearly paid off. By the time we moved, she had taken so many seconds and loans out on it for him that she basically was back to square one. A house that I think they bought the house in Norwalk for about $45,000, and it was nearly paid off. By the time we left, with the market value and all the loans, it was well over $180,000. I thought that house was going to be in our family forever. I thought that I would eventually purchase it and live there, but he fixed my little red wagon, didn't he? Now, he needed that money, though, because he was going to start a towing business. So he bought one of those giant flatbed trucks that you can put cars on, and he was going to get 2 or 3 of those and open up a towing business. And I'll never forget the phone ringing in Buena Park about 2 in the morning, and it's a guy. He's like, "Yeah, we got your business card, your number, and there's a guy broke down, needs a tow." "Oh, no. Well, it says you're a tow truck." No. I'm not. It's too late. I'm sleeping. And I remember my mom looking at him like, "I lost my house because you were going to become a tow truck driver, and we were going to start a business, and you didn't do it. We lost that house, or she sold it. We ended up getting nothing for it, or breaking even." Imagine owning a house free and clear at this stage. I mean, that's so rare these days. But he fixed our wagon pretty good. And when we moved from Norwalk to Buena Park, he helped me move, and he was so friendly about it. And I realized about a year after moving to Buena Park, he had kept some of my stuff. So I went in his little secret garage, and I was like, "What are you doing? This is all my stuff. You're a thief." I said, "Not only are you a raging a-hole, but you're a thief too? I'm not a thief. All the stuff you've accused me of all through the years is actually you. You're a monster." And he was, is, could be, always will be. And isn't it funny how some of the meanest people never die? When I talk about my father and his mother, monster woman, Tilly, she lived to be 100. You know, my mom was dead at 54. And it always seems like when you meet older people, they're mean, and somehow that meanness has kept them alive, you know, like Darth Vader. He's more machine now than man, evil and twisted. Ooh, ooh. So yeah, that was my life with Don Berg. I finally got out. We convinced her to leave him, and we moved to a little house, and my mom got really sick really quick, and not 6 months after that, she was dead, which is a real bummer, because I thought that she had finally reached a point where she didn't need some loser in her life, you know. She could be happy by herself, maybe date a few guys. But it was not to be. It was not to be. And again, like most things in life, everything goes out with a whimper. You know, and only in the movies do things end on a big bang. There was no big giant fight with this guy at the end. You know, by the time I said goodbye to Berg, I was not in any mood to fight with him. I wanted to just look at him and go, "We're done. We are done." You know, it was a really weird teenage years, man. When I look back and think that I survived all that, and that I'm semi-normal, and that I'm not on a bunch of antidepressants. Like, I don't take any pills. You know, I don't drink any alcohol. All of the weirdness in my life, I've just somehow absorbed like a human box of baking soda, you know? You ever seen that Simpsons episode where Homer eats a baking soda and he can taste all the meals from 30 years ago? That's me. And this podcast is now the oral recording and history of all the craziness that I went through growing up. Is it interesting? I don't know. I've told this tale to a lot of people, and it seems interesting. They seem interested. I don't know if you've gotten anything out of it other than that poor man. But I don't want you to think that. I mean, this is just, again, this was reality. I thought everybody lived with drunks. I thought everybody won the science fair by building a working still. I thought everybody had craziness. Because when you see movies, very rarely is family life idyllic. You know, it's always strife and turmoil. And God, Don Berg was turmoil, man. He was crazy. And it was just, to me, it was just weird because I thought I was doing everything right. I was graduating. I was doing my work. I was doing extra stuff. I was doing plays. The senior play I wrote, it was a 3-act monstrosity, you know, 2 hours, 2 solid hours that I wrote. It was funny and great. And I didn't get any accolades from him. Not that I was looking for them. You know, my mother was proud as can be. But I never got any accolades from him. And again, I wasn't looking for them, but it just seemed odd. And I know that he would go to parties, and he would brag to people about me. And he would come home and just, it would be the same fights would start all over again. And I'd ask my mom, I'd go, why does he go places and he's proud, and he comes home and he just treats me this way? Well, this is the only way he knows. Well, that's a bummer. You know, when he was raising his own kids, and can you imagine what it must have been like to be like, that's dad? Oh, at least I was like, I'm out of here. I don't have to respect you. I don't know you. But if that's your dad, I mean, his kids must have grown up crazy. And I know that one year for Christmas, he asked his kids, you can each get gifts or we can get a TV. And they got a TV. And Christmas morning, they opened up a TV. You know, that's weird to me. And we're not talking the 40s. This was the 70s. What a weird man. I almost wish he was still alive. I just assume he's dead. I'm sorry. But I would love to interview him. I'd like to just say, what was your deal, man? because I never had an adult conversation with him. It was always fights. It was always a fight. And I just, it was weird. One time he brought home 2 Pomeranian dogs for my mom and him. Like they were going to raise, like these were their new kids. And we had these stuck up little conceited, and you know what I mean, these little dogs that like are so self-important, and like there he is with the dogs, and it was named Lady and Freckles. Lady, come on lady, come on lady, come on lady, come on Freckles. So he's got ladies, he's got Freckles and Yaki the bird. Hello. Like it's crazy. The whole situation's crazy. But hey, I made it through. And I think it made me a better person, a better father. You know, you can't. I'm not the guy that looks at it and goes, "Well, it put me into years of therapy." I guess it could if I was that person, but I'm not that person. You know, I always you just deal with it, and you try to use what you've been given, and you mold it into ways to make you a stronger, better person. And I am a better person than Don ever was. You know, the person I always was better than anything he tried to be. The guy was a monster. I don't miss him. Can you tell? I don't miss anybody. I don't miss the drunks. I don't miss him. I miss my mom. But that's typical. My mom raised me. My mom bought me every Star Wars toy known to man. I'm not saying she bought my love, but she was always there. You know, one of the best memories I have is when I was in college, I had written a play, and my mom was sitting there with my cousin, and when the lights went out for the play to begin, she started screaming and applauding, and my cousin put his arm on her and he said, "Now let him earn it." My mom was like, "He's already earned it." And that just says it all, right? You know, in the eyes of your mom, you're already perfect. And that strength is what got me through. And being able to escape to, you know, your girlfriend's house doesn't hurt, because over there it's a different world, you know. I learned a lot escaping into other places. But hey, look, we're over an hour and a half on this thing, and if you're still listening, God bless you, because it's a memory lane fraught with landmines. But hey, thanks for listening. More episodes are in the pipeline. I got a bunch of stuff more to talk about. This is 91 Reasons. The best way to support this podcast is to give us a great review on iTunes. Tell your friends about us. Share the links. Download the podcast. You can find us on Facebook. And if you'd like to support it in other ways, I am the author of 3 books, The Sixth Key, The Lost Station, and The Infinite Backward, and they're all available on Amazon and now on Kindle for a mere 99 cents each. And like I've said, for under $3, you can have 11 years of my life. I am Jeff Tucker, the voice. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to 91 Reasons. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. Find us on Facebook. Is anyone even still listening?